Oh, I know it is. Good morning and welcome to the BlackUSA.News morning show. It didn't even dawn on me, Neil. We got a green screen and I got a green tie. So that's really not going to work. Okay. Makeup change on set, wardrobe change. Neil Dubowski, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Donnie. Good to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
Good. Breaking news. Word on the street. Martin's wife, Katie, is running for attorney general. You're a lawyer. You already got Anthony Brown committed to this race. I understand that Delegate Jazz Lewis is looking at the AG spot. You know, back in Baltimore in 99, you had Carl Stokes, Lawrence Bell, Martin O'Malley. And some people say that O'Malley split the black vote, or no, he got more than both of them combined. But I don't know that O'Malley's name rings well the same way today. What do you think?
No, it doesn't. And I think what you're going to see is a relatively ugly primary on the Democratic side.
They will be talking about each other's mother.
I think they will be. I think what you're going to see is, Anthony Brown talk about the O'Malleys and the fact that there's a parallel here to sort of the Clinton situation, in a sense, where you had Bill Clinton serve 2 terms and then his wife coming on the back end and running for the same position. And this idea that we're not a monarchy. We're not designed to be a monarchy. You don't just get the benefit of the privilege of your name. You have to stand on your credentials. And I'm not saying that to be dismissive of Katie O'Malley, who's an impressive lady, but I think you're going to see her attacked on this theory that there's this entitlement mentality that, she's an O'Malley and that's why she's running. And really, if you take that,
you do know who her dad was.
Absolutely.
So she could make the argument she's coming back to get her daddy's seat.
Yeah, I mean, I think that honestly, Donnie,
I want my daddy's records.
Yeah, I think that.
Watch Sanford and Son?
I think that. Yeah, I remember Sanford and Son.
I want my daddy records.
I think that door swings both ways. I don't know that helps her. I understand the argument, but I think that just ties into this idea that there's sort of a legacy bit on her part, right?
You think people are tired of that?
I do. I think people, just generally speaking, are not enamored with this idea of of continuity from one person to the other, especially when it comes from the same family. I suspect. And look, she's a smart lady. I mentioned to you right before we went on air. Yeah, I've been practicing law for a long time now. Katie O'Malley is a district court judge. I've appeared in front of her a few times. She's an immensely intelligent and capable woman in her own right, and I'm not in any way suggesting otherwise. But she's going to have to overcome this idea that this, again, what I'll call the Hillary Clinton concept, which is that somehow she thinks she's doing it based on her name and that there isn't another basis for it. She's going to have to deal with it.
No. She is not naive to think. I mean, she's a judge. Mm-hmm. She has thought this thing out before she even stepped out there.
Agreed.
1, to capitalize on her daddy's legacy. 2, to capitalize on the O'Malley name. And interestingly, there are already 2 to 3 black candidates that have already announced. Additionally, she hails, she's from Baltimore?
Yep.
Yes, she is Baltimore. But clearly the O'Malley name is a statewide name. So she taps into both the current name and the O'Malley name. People like the daddy a hell of a lot more than they like Martin O'Malley.
Well, and I was going to go there. People, you talked about the mayoral race. Not that people forget, but it's a long time ago. I actually moved to Baltimore in 1999, right when that mayor race was going on, when he was first elected mayor. And, there's this tendency, I think, sometimes to overlook or gloss over the fact that Martin O'Malley isn't particularly loved in Baltimore, and
Isn't particularly loved.
I'm saying that as delicately as I can, Donnie.
He's
Um,
hated.
yeah, I mean,
Mass incarceration, zero tolerance, locking people up for urinating, locking
this,
people up for sitting on their own steps. They came at me
the
for
second.
peddling a bicycle within the city limits without a headlight.
Mhm.
Who knew? I learned that night.
Yeah, I mean, and then to top it all off, there's a perception, and I want to be careful how I say this. I'm presenting it sort of not as my own opinion necessarily, but there's certainly a perception that O'Malley, kind of stood on the shoulders of the people in Baltimore City to run for governor, and then left them behind.
And then he left the people of Maryland behind, kind of, sort of, to run for president. Meaning, rather than focus on the job at hand, he's looking down the road. And I think, we already saw it with the transition from local to state. So while you running the state, now you're looking down, and that's what people. So, it's like you're a repeat offender.
Yeah. And look, I mean, people sometimes forget that he ran for president because of how unsuccessful that bid was.
Oh my God, he didn't get 1%.
Not right. I mean, I remember him in one debate, and then he didn't qualify for any of the others.
My God, he didn't qualify for that debate. He didn't know a Kurd from a Shia, from a Shiite, from a Sunni.
Yeah.
Bernie and Hillary were running circles around him. I actually felt sorry for Martin O'Malley. That's how
That's how bad it was.
It was it's like, come on, man. You could have went to Saturday coach class and did better than this.
Yeah. That part I don't think people are going to hold against her, but the name, I think and you're right. She's a smart lady and she will have thought this through. And I think she certainly would understand that to the extent her candidacy is going to be successful, she's going to have to present herself as Katie, not O'Malley and not Schaefer.
Yeah, but see, this is what is invariably going to happen, I think. Has she ever run for office?
No. I mean, that's certainly not as I know. She's been a judge for a while, and that's an appointed position.
So you're telling me she's going to run for statewide office, having never run for office before? She's going to have to call in Martin.
Oh, for sure.
Or at least Peter. Are they still a couple?
Yeah, as far as I know.
I'm just, reading the tea leaves, looking at the streets.
Martin O'Malley ran statewide twice successfully and clearly built up a donor base, a subscriber base. The idea that his wife is going to run for a statewide race and not,
how can he not be involved?
Right. It's sort of insulting to suggest that she wouldn't take advantage of that. Of course she is.
Now, to that note, Anthony Brown did not tap into that O'Malley machine when he ran statewide, or at least it didn't seem that way.
Right.
Now, even though he was despised, I would have had to use that machine. You're trying to win.
Yep.
You got to pull out your big guns. But to his credit, or at least in an attempt to define himself, Anthony Brown really, he stiff-armed that O'Malley.
So now take a step back, because I think you raised the seminal point here. Okay. Martin O'Malley was no doubt pissed that Anthony Brown ran his campaign the way he did without involving him as much as O'Malley would have liked. Anthony Brown tried to run his own, he tried to establish his own identity. I think he perceived that O'Malley wasn't as loved. And the fact that Katie is now running against Anthony Brown is in some ways a reflection of the distaste that stems back to Anthony Brown's gubernatorial race. That's just my sense of it. This is the O'Malley camp's way of saying we don't, Anthony Brown, you didn't use us the way you should have. You're incapable of winning statewide, and we think so little of you.
Is that the argument or part of the argument?
It's part of it. It's not the whole thing, but it's part of it.
Because the other part could be, well, people hated your guts. I would have been a fool to associate myself with such a despised character like yourself.
And okay, I think that was a part of it when he ran. And now look at the O'Malley response to that.
You should have took me.
This is the.
I know I'm a batterer. I know I'm an abuser. You should have took me anyway. This is my state.
Mm-hmm.
I know I was mean to you. I know I used you.
And O'Malley would turn around to Anthony Brown and say, hey, I won statewide twice. You couldn't even do it once. And this is the O'Malley camp's way of saying, we just don't trust that Anthony Brown can win a statewide race. We think so little of his candidacy that we're going to run somebody who has a great job as a district court judge, somebody who's never run for elected office, let alone statewide. We're going to run against him.
This race has more pop than the governor's race. Right now, this is more exhilarating than the governor's race.
Because I think what you have is you have the Martin O'Malley angle big time. We're going to end up relitigating. We're going to end up relitigating the O'Malley administration through the Attorney General race.
Yes, sir, Bob. It's going to be a wonderful 2021.
Yep.
And 2022, June 28th, 8 months away, 8 months to the day. June 28th, 2028, 8 months away. Let me slide on over to the comptroller's race. Have you been hearing anything from Brooke Learman?
No, I haven't. And that's one I actually haven't been following as closely as I probably should have. I've spent more time on the gubernatorial race.
She's running against the mayor of Bowie, Tim Adams.
Has anybody else thrown their hat in there?
No one of major magnitude that I know of thus far. So you got Brooke Learman. Her daddy was in politics down there in Montgomery County. Brooke Learman is now in Baltimore City. But the thing is, we brought her on this show, and we want everyone to know that the comptroller is one of 3 votes on the Board of Public Works. You got the governor, the treasurer, and the comptroller. And they vote on contracts. And on this show, we asked Brooke Learman where she stood on ensuring that contracts that come through that board, that some of those contracts would go to Black-owned businesses. So let me ask you, Neil, if you were running for comptroller and you were on this show and I asked you, hey, Neil, you want to be comptroller? What are you going to do for Black businesses?
Absolutely.
What's your response?
Yes. Next question.
Well, she wouldn't do that. She refused to say yes. And I refuse to give that a lot of credibility because it's a smack in the face. Blacks make up 30% of the state. To ignore the question, to step over it is saying that I don't matter. And I know damn well I matter. I'm a Black Democrat in a 30% Black state. And that 30% can possibly swing any election in Maryland. Just ask Larry Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
Ask Robert Early. And I'm reminded that the Black community actually got more out of Ehrlich and Hogan than we may have out of a Democratic governor. You know, it's kind of like, do you remember that rap song that says, if your girl starts acting up, then you take her friend?
Right.
We don't have options in the Black community. It's almost a foregone conclusion that African Americans are going to vote Democrat.
Which means they get taken for granted.
Yeah, and that's why in 2002, Prince George's County, Baltimore dismissed Kathleen Kennedy Townsend. And you said that O'Malley ran for governor twice. I will venture to say he was fortunate to have 3 campaigns. The first one was the precursor in 2002, where he decided not to run. That's when he stepped back. The word on the street is Uncle Teddy Kennedy gave him a call. Say, hey there, Martin, want you to step on back, let my niece in there. Kathleen Kennedy Townsend. She got an overnight Republican named Admiral Charles R. Larson. He was a Republican yesterday, a Democrat today. And then she got her butt beat.
And look, she was a particularly poor candidate. And they cleared the field for her because of the name issue. And she was not, she was Glendenning's lieutenant governor, if I remember correctly. And
she was rude to black people. She was dismissive of black people. I knew people that went to meet her, and she said, "I'm not my daddy, I'm not my uncle," and turned her ass around and walked away. That's the word on the street. I remember it like yesterday because that story was told over and over, how dismissive she was of the African American community.
And I think one of the things certainly that Governor Hogan has done a good job of, and one of the reasons why, whether you voted for him or not, one of the reasons why he's relatively popular within the state, I don't think there's any dispute that he's a popular governor, is because he has been open-minded on a lot of issues that Democratic governors have not been as open-minded about.
And he's called a spade a spade.
I will tell you, think about the question you just asked me that you asked Brooke Lierman. If you had Governor Hogan on your show and you asked him that same question, you would get an answer a lot more like mine than the one you got from Brooke Lierman. From Governor Hogan.
And plus, he's about business.
Yep.
Too often, Democrats miss the business of politics. And I don't understand. It's like the Republicans are the only one that took math class. Politics is the running of a country. It's about compromise, but it's also about business. Here in the city of Baltimore, in my estimation, in my experiences, we chase business away. We're so busy penalizing them, giving them tickets, giving them rules and regulations, and you got to fill this out. You got to do it. Oh, a business person doesn't have time for silly stuff like that. Make it easy. Consolidate. Have a one-stop shop. But you can't have people bringing this type of mentality to politics if they've never run a business. I would trust you, Neil. I would trust you to run a jurisdiction because I know you to run a business. There's some things that come with running a business that you will never experience as an employee.
Yep. I mean, go back to
that you'll never face as an employee.
Go back to the contract situation, the government contracts, and the question you asked her. This perception, I think this is something that Democrats fall down on, that they fail to recognize, that somebody like Governor Hogan or that people who run businesses understand. The idea of providing contracts or elevating Black-owned businesses to get government contracts isn't a handout. It is an opportunity for a minority-owned business to get their foot in the door, to then do the work that we know they're capable of doing every bit as well as everybody else, which then elevates that business, it elevates communities, and it provides an opportunity, not a handout, through a business means to elevate communities. And the fact that that a lot of people on the Democratic side don't see that they still seem more in favor of handouts over business contracts, to me is indicative of what you're talking about.
It's parochial thinking.
It is parochial. There's an inherent assumption underlying that if we provide, we just want to give money to inner city communities.
I would say it's underlying racism.
Mm-hmm.
No, we shouldn't even need in 2021 someone to say, "Hey, make sure everybody gets something to eat." This almost cussed on my own show. This is not complicated. At my mama's house, and I'm going back, she's been gone 36 years. Thanksgiving, everybody eats. It ain't you take a plate and you go eat out on the back porch, or tell your friends to come down the alley and come around back, or we're going to leave a plate for you at the end of the block. No. Come to the table, get a plate, and eat. Everybody eats. And the last Thanksgiving, my mom gave me 2 plates after I was chopping down, I think it was some German chocolate cake. Oh, the memories just, ooh. But she brought up to me over my right shoulder. I look, she's got 2 plates. I said, what you want me to do with that, Ma? She said, go feed somebody. I said, who? She said, anybody. B. Gaddy. Her day is coming up in another 20 days or so. B. Gaddy Thanksgiving dinner. B. Gaddy, the patron saint of Baltimore, because she would go into alleys, into all kinds of hidden places where the homeless would sleep and call people out by name. Come get something hot to eat. Come get some hot chocolate. Take a blanket. What's wrong with this? This is basic human compassion. Everybody celebrates Christmas, but we never look at the Christ. And I ain't being a holy roller. I'm just talking about a willingness to serve the people. Malcolm X said you can't serve the people if you don't love the people. Now, I mean, you got to love everything about everybody, but basic human decency. Why do I got to tell you, hey, Neil, you got to make sure those Latino businesses get something? Why does there have to be legislation? It should be a given. Why are we so stuck on stupid? And I will submit to you, Neil, because you come from a more mature South Africa who understood truth and reconciliation and say, hey, I was wrong. Hey, I did this wrong. Just like an addict, just like an alcoholic, I have a problem. That is the only way you can address your problem. To address it,
that's why one of the steps. Yeah, that's why one of the steps in the AA program is forgiveness. Right? People are required to reach out to people they've wronged in order to seek forgiveness. You can't move forward without that. But as you were talking, there was one word that I kept thinking about that sort of overlaid everything that you were saying. And it goes back to this issue about contracts for minority-owned businesses and why it's so important and why that really should be, to me, the answer, any answer other than yes, to me is disqualifying, because the idea underlying all of it is empowerment, right?
Because you're not talking about giving.
Correct.
Welfare.
Correct. You are empowering people. It's opportunity and empowerment. You are empowering people to elevate themselves, right? Through the, because once they have the contract, they have to do the work. They have to justify the contract. They have to go out and hire people, right? I mean, the business concepts that you were just talking about, this isn't, and the idea that anybody would be opposed to that in a political environment where that nobody can dispute that minority-owned businesses have been disadvantaged for generations, right? The idea that anybody would be opposed to that, to me,
very undemocratic.
It's also political suicide, in my opinion, in a state like Maryland. I'll be candid with you.
And why would you want to be presented like that? There's
like
a certain arrogance like that I'm ashamed to live next. I'm ashamed that you're a delegate already.
Yeah, I mean, and it's why I go back to the point of, if you had Larry Hogan, or Bob Ehrlich, pick either of them. If you had either of those two gentlemen on your show and asked them the same question, they would both say yes. I absolutely would. And for two reasons. They understand the concept of empowerment. They were both business owners. But number two, they also understand the political reality in the state of Maryland, that you cannot be successful statewide if you oppose something like that. It doesn't, it's just on either, the answer doesn't make any sense. Who is she catering to?
Well, let's look at the other side of the equation. She's running against the mayor of Bowie, Tim Adams, a self-made millionaire. Have you heard his name?
I've heard of him. I don't know much about him.
Well, he's got to do a better job getting out there.
Yes, he does.
He's got to do a much better job. It's not enough to say, "Oh, she bad," without being able. If he can't capitalize, hey, losers go home. The day after the election, June 29th, is no shoulda, coulda, woulda. That won't work. You need to know that you've turned over every rock. You've knocked on every door. You've made every phone call. You've raised every dime necessary in order to secure victory. Okay, there was a topic you and I were talking about yesterday. What was it?
Was it the redistricting in Baltimore County?
There we go. What do you know about redistricting, gerrymandering?
Oh my goodness, how long you got? I can tell you,
33 minutes.
the issue in Baltimore County relates to the redistricting of some of the districts and how many of them are going to be minority majority districts. I know there was some pushback to the idea that there would only be one majority minority district in Baltimore County, and the idea that based on the population of Baltimore County in general, that really two was more beneficial and made more sense. And they're still in the process of evaluating that. I have my doubts that the Baltimore County County Council has a couple of conservative Republicans on it. Whether or not they're going to be swayed, someone like David Marks, for example, I saw a quote from him where he said, "I'll take it under advisement, or I'll consider it," and I think we all know what that means. So to me, that there's a bigger issue involved, and this is what you and I touched on yesterday about gerrymandering or redistricting in general, which is it has in many ways been the driving force in the destruction of our political environment.
Why do you say?
And I don't think it's overstating it to say that, because it has divided the country. It has created extremism within certainly Congress in DC and to some degree locally as well, by creating too many safe districts and by carve out. So for example, the majority of states in the US have Republican governors and Republican state legislatures which get to draw their districts. And so a lot of these states are drawn in such a way, the districts within the states are drawn in such a way as to maximize the number of seats that party is going to get. And quite candidly, let's be honest about it, the reverse of that is also true. Take Maryland, for example. Right? Maryland is one of the most gerrymandered states in the country at the congressional level. We are a majority Democrat state, right? Democrats win statewide races significantly more than Republicans, but it's not lopsided, right? We've had Republican governors. It's not 50-50, but it ain't 70-30 either. We have 8 congressional seats, and only one of them is held by a Republican, Andy Harris, right? Because they carved out districts to ensure that we maximized. They basically took all the conservative areas of the state of Maryland, all the heavily conservative areas, and put them in one district, right? And then everybody pats themselves in the back and says, hey, look at what a great job we did. We have 7 members of Congress, Democratic members of Congress in Maryland, and only 1 Republican. But look at who the Republican is. By carving out that extremely conservative district, you get somebody like Andy Harris, right? Who is a January 6th Trump apologist cult member, because what we have done is we have created a district that is going to elevate crazy people.
And he went to Johns Hopkins. He's a doctor too.
I understand that. There's another guy. So I looked at Arizona, for example. Arizona is pretty 50-50 in terms of its congressional delegation, but 2 of their Republican members of Congress are a gentleman by the name of Andy Biggs and Paul Gosar. Paul Gosar has been accused of conspiring with the January 6th insurrectionists in terms of planning that attack.
Why aren't they arrested?
I still think they're doing an investigation. Why aren't they arrested is because everything's tribal now. Like no matter what anybody on the Republican side does, somebody's going to defend them. And again, it goes back to the extremism. Marjorie Taylor Greene, that crazy woman from Georgia, right, is in a district that is heavily, heavily conservative. And so what you now have, I went back and looked at this, Donnie, to kind of illustrate the point. There are 435 seats in Congress. In the 2020 election, do you know how many of those 435 were deemed to be competitive races, meaning races that actually were somewhat up in there as opposed to safe seats?
Let's go with half of them.
43, 10%.
10%.
10% of seats in the last election were deemed to be competitive, meaning for the other 400, right, 395, whatever that number is.
That's because of the gerrymandering, the redrawing of the lines.
And so what ends up happening is you have these crazy extreme people who are in safe seats who get to say and do whatever they want, and they go to Congress not to legislate, not to compromise, right? But knowing that they can be flamethrowers and it ain't going to cost them their seat. Because That is a feature, not a bug, right?
Now,
That's what
now
their constituents want, because we've created a constituency that's extremist.
so you're suggesting that the redrawing of lines is bad.
Yeah, on both sides. And, in a perfect world, the answer is to create some type of federal agency that, evenly split between Republicans and Democrats, that would draw lines um, throughout the entire country. But that's never going to happen, because what you're asking for is you're asking for both sides to, voluntarily relinquish the ability to redraw those lines to their political benefit. Look, Republicans are 50-50 in the Senate, right? Now, again, gerrymandering doesn't apply in the Senate because they're statewide races, but they're 50-50 in the Senate, and they're only upside down, I think, 9 seats in the House. And yet, Democrats consistently get more votes statewide in congressional races than Republicans do. I think in 2016, Democrats in congressional races had 8% more votes than Republicans. In 2020, it was closer to 4%. But consistently, Democrats get more votes. But because of how these districts are drawn, because they're being drawn more by Republican legislatures than Democrats, there's a disproportionate benefit to Republicans, where the number of seats they have does not equate to the amount of support that they are getting.
So that's why I wanted to ask you about the Electoral College, because if you want to get rid of gerrymandering, then why not get rid of the Electoral College? Because that seems to be the biggest impediment. Numerically, give the people what they vote for. This Electoral College goes back to slavery, goes back to the days of slavery when they counted 2/3 of a black man as a black man is 2/3 of a human being, all behind slave numbers, slaves with the ability to vote.
Yeah, I have slightly more sympathy for the Electoral College as a concept than I do for gerrymandering,
How so?
because yeah, well, because we have the census every 10 years, and that determines the number of
I'm
seats, which
saying the
then
very
determines.
fact that you even have to do an electoral college.
Well, so I think one of the theories behind the Electoral College, and
It wasn't a theory, it was racist. They counted 2/3 of a human being. Let's just stop with that. I'm only 2/3 of a human being. That's the problem right there. It's unacceptable.
Oh, look, nobody's going to justify. I shouldn't say that. There might be some of these gerrymandered Republican members of Congress who might try to even justify that, but certainly nobody reasonable accepts the premise that existed in the original Constitution. But for purposes of the Electoral College, I think the theory behind it is that if you simply decide who wins the presidency based on popular vote only, you are going to end up marginalizing people in smaller states, who are then going to feel disenfranchised. Meaning, if the state of New York and California, right, would basically elect the president because their populations dwarf, the combined populations of like 30 other states. And that's the main reason why the Electoral College exists. Even though the biggest states do have more Electoral College votes, there's a governor within the system to ensure that we simply don't just elect presidents based on popular vote. I think there's certainly an argument to get rid of the Electoral College. I don't think it's nearly as strong as the argument to get rid of gerrymandering. I think gerrymandering is far more of a curse on our political environment. It's unusual. It has happened, right? But it is
But
unusual.
wouldn't
What's
it
that?
be wouldn't it be unrealistic? You have to redraw the lines. To me, that makes more sense because people move.
I
The
don't.
increase in Baltimore County equals the decrease, for the most part, in Baltimore City.
I don't think the issue is whether the lines need to be redrawn. I think the issue is who gets to redraw them. I don't think anybody disagrees that people move,
Good
and,
point.
and, and that there's a population centers change, and that every so often we have to redraw lines in order to ensure that we're capturing. But
You
right
know what
now,
I
the way
find?
we
It makes the Democrats have to work in a 2-to-1 Democratic state where
yeah,
they have not been working.
look,
Money has come to Baltimore, money has come to Maryland, but we don't see the Democrats being too damn democratic because East and West Baltimore have not seen investment in 50 years.
Yeah, and this is what I'm saying. This is not, I point fingers at the Republicans because they're predominantly guilty, but that's only because they have the majority of states. If the shoe was on the other foot, the Democrats would be doing the exact same thing, and they've done it in Maryland, right? Like Maryland is one of the most
I'm saying
extremely
the
and
Democrats are as racist in Maryland as the Republicans are nationally.
I
Maryland has never had a black governor. Maryland has never had a black U.S. senator. Maryland is really mucked up, stuck on stupid. It's a new day. Wake up, smell the coffee.
I'm not sure they're as racist as some of the Republicans in DC, but your point's certainly well taken. Maryland has a long way to go.
Neil, Freddie Gray, Baltimore was the epicenter of international media attention 6 years ago.
I remember
The
it.
only thing new in Sandtown, Harlem Park, since Freddie Gray is a funeral home and a renovated police district. If that's not sending a message as to what we think of you, then nothing will. Give them an undertaker and a new prison, a new jail. Wow, that's what you think of me. My people have gone through all of this hell, bricks, fires, already got vacants, and you're going to give me a new funeral home and a renovated jail. Wow. Bring that home for Valentine's Day to your wife and see what you get.
Donnie, there's a bigger point here that I think you're right on about. We talked last week to Doug Gansler, and one of the issues that came up was the city of Baltimore and what could be done for the city of Baltimore. And this is not a knock on Doug. Doug gave what I thought was a perfectly acceptable answer to that question. The problem is that same question and that same issue, you just could have cut and pasted from 4 years ago or 8 years ago, or even going back 12 years ago. Everybody talks and nothing happens. And Baltimore City, everybody says, oh, Baltimore City is the flagship of the state. And as Baltimore goes, so goes the state, blah, blah, blah. And then nobody does anything about it. And Baltimore City has declined. Forget being invigorated. Forget being rejuvenated. Even if it just maintained its status quo, that would be an improvement, right? Nobody cares. And it's been really sad to watch the decline in Baltimore City over the last decade plus. And politicians have talked about it and nobody's done anything.
Well, let me tell you, there are a lot of black people in this majority black city who are complicit with the destruction of Baltimore. We've got more black elected officials percentage-wise, Democrats, than most anywhere in the country. And that's what's even more perplexing. How do you have all of these blacks as mayor, comptroller, city council president, and every goddamn agency across, and people still aren't being served? And I have an answer for you, Neil. I'm going to tell you why you have all of these blacks in position, and yet the black community is not moving forward. You know why?
Tell me why.
Because of classism. You got blacks with a couple of degrees and a nice house above Northern Parkway who have very little understanding of where their grandmother was born, in Sandtown or in East Baltimore. You got black people with degrees who don't come to Sandtown, to Harlem Park. They just look down their nose. They look down their funky noses at these communities, which are actually historic communities where black people started from. So I would say a big culprit, a big enemy of the black community is black people with degrees that don't have a goddamn lick of common sense.
Yeah, I also think, what's that expression?
You can't say that. You're a white guy, but I can say it.
Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. I think there's also a component of it that when
power over what? To get their friends a couple jobs? That ain't power.
I think it's a power in the sense that you elevate to a position of authority. You're a councilman or a leadership position, and then you get invited to these fancy cocktail parties, and you're hobnobbing with fancy people who are donating money to campaigns, and there's a tendency to just forget where you came from.
So they need to be gone. Perrin J. Mitchell was tempted, was lured by the best of them, and he said, "If you ain't taking care of my district, you got nothing coming." See, That's unacceptable, Neil, in the black community because we know better. We've had greats like Perrin J. Mitchell open the door, like Judge Joe Howard, the first black man elected in the city of Baltimore. We understand integrity and character, and we understand when you're black, you can't make any mistakes. But however, there are this nouveau generation that thinks you can steal, that you can use the office for self. Look at Kathy Pugh. What a smack in the face of the ancestors. What a smack in the face of black people doing good things. For her to use her entire career to sell a poorly edited book.
Yeah.
How sad and pathetic.
But where is you talk about the black community in Baltimore and how they won't stand for it and how this is an abomination. Where's the accountability?
The only accountability besides BeMoreNews.com is Fox TV, it seems. I don't see the Sun paper asking questions.
No.
I don't see Channel 11 or 13 asking pertinent questions. They're as quiet as a church mouse urinating on Coppin. Now, Fox has gone overboard. They have gone overboard. They do have an agenda.
Yeah. Fox has an agenda?
But they're the only ones I see asking questions.
Yeah. To me, the primary goal of any elected official is to get reelected, right? Everything flows from maintaining power. And if you think that what you're doing, it doesn't affect your ability to get reelected, you're going to continue doing it no matter how much people may gripe about it in the background. But if there's a sense of true accountability, if the people say enough, if you're not going to do right by us, we are going to find somebody else who will. And there's a sense of true accountability, not through the media, but at the ballot box. That's the only real way to affect positive change.
Neil, there's been a lot of brain drain over the past 50 years in Baltimore. As integration came about, blacks wanted to leave West Baltimore, move to Woodlawn, Randallstown, Owens Mills. Population in Baltimore County of black people has gone up a whole point, if I'm not mistaken. I think an additional 10,000 people, but
yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why they're having the redistricting conversation. There's been an increase in the minority community in Baltimore County.
That's a part of it. But also Baltimore, greater Baltimore, has lost population. I mean, we're fortunate we didn't lose the district altogether to go down to Prince George's County because people are leaving. And see, this is a direct result of piss poor government. For the past 20 years, we've chased people out of Baltimore. We've beat up Baltimoreans. We've locked them up. We don't have any Fortune 500s. We can't keep a police commissioner. We allow school commissioner Andres Alonso to come in and remove 75% of the principals. How do you do that and keep the corporation healthy, Neil? And so you got bad decisions and outcomes, just a repeated series of bad decisions and negative outcomes.
Yeah, it's been a spiral.
So when are you running for office, Neil?
Oh boy. There was a time that I did think about it. And now that I have my own law practice, I don't see it happening anytime soon. I'm too invested in my business and in continuing to be successful in that. But I'd always thought about running for the House of Delegates in my Towson district.
Well, Baltimore County is what, 4 Democrats, 3 Republicans on the council. Got the first ever black chair of the Baltimore County Council. Hey, Julian Jones, I spoke with him yesterday. Of course, he wants people, Dolores Kelly thinks he should be going for 2 districts. And Julian is saying, hey, it's better to have 1 strong district than 2 weak districts. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. And that's the big fight out there.
That is the big fight. But that goes back. But to me, that's part of the problem. And I'm not faulting Julian for this. Again, he has to do what he thinks is right politically. And that makes sense to me. I'm speaking more from the 30,000 foot perspective, right? when you say that one strong district is better than two less strong ones,
One
better,
70% black
yeah,
district is better than two 50%
better
black districts.
better for whom?
Black people.
Right, I get that, but then what happens in jurisdictions where black people are underrepresented politically and
They're gonna
districts
keep.
are
They're gonna keep.
drawn
They're gonna
like
keep not getting anything.
right. Take Texas, for example. Texas just got 2 legislative seats added through the latest census. And the governor in Texas just signed a bill adding their 2 seats, and they redrew them specifically to try and eliminate or to try and reduce Houston and Dallas, certain of the more urban parts of those communities, to ensure that those 2 seats would be Republican seats. Right. So the outcome's different, but the principle of what Governor Abbott is doing is not that different than what Julian Jones is suggesting.
No, no different at
It's
all.
just,
But I
it's
have a
just
solution for the Republicans from a black perspective. I think half of black people ought to join the Republican Party. And show up to all of their parties and eat up all of their
I
food.
wasn't
There's
expecting
much better
that.
food. Yes. Do you remember that initially blacks were Republican?
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah, right. I mean, Lincoln was a Republican, sure.
So this goes straight on up through to the 20th century, and then things changed. And that's what you find in America. First, one group of people lived here, then another group of people lives here. And then at a previous group, they moved back there. You know, like Baltimore County. This is not the first time blacks have been in Baltimore County. You do know that Benjamin Banneker, the architect of Washington, D.C., comes from Baltimore County.
I did know that.
It's not like black people haven't ever lived in Baltimore County. As a matter of fact, what's interesting is that out Liberty Road, they've lost 3 supermarkets. So it just goes to show that whether you're upwardly mobile black or poorer blacks, it's the same damn treatment from the dominant society.
Donnie, here's the problem to some degree with what you're proposing, right? I understand your philosophical point or your point about the black people joining the Republican Party, because it would do 2 things, right? It would equalize things, and it would force the Democrats to be more serious about how they treat one of their biggest demographic groups.
Their largest voting bloc.
Correct. Consistent
Most loyal
voting bloc. Most loyal and most consistent voting bloc.
Man, can you imagine cheating on your wife?
No.
That's what happens to black Democrats. We get cheated on. We marry a cheating ass spouse.
But you always come back.
Not me.
No, I didn't
I'm
mean
not
you.
from that mob. Cheat on me. I'll show you what you get.
But here's the problem, Donnie. You use the Republican Party as sort of a catch-all, as though there's one Republican Party, and there's not. And this is something that I've been wrestling with over the last, I don't know, 4 to 5 to 6 years. Are we talking about Larry Hogan, or are we talking about Donald Trump?
They're all the same.
No, they're not.
What I like about Republicans,
No, they're not.
they tell you straight up front. At the end of the day, it's about money and power. And also it's about common sense. So I don't know how either one, well, we know Trump isn't that smart on the international. Smart, not smart. I mean, people hated him around the world. People don't seem to hate a Larry Hogan like they hate a Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump should have never been elected. And what's really poor is that the Republicans, with all of their resources, couldn't have found a more intelligent human being, more decent human being.
But that's sort of the point. They didn't, because the Republican Party today predominantly doesn't want that human being. That's the part that I've reluctantly come to understand. This is who they are now. Like, this is the Republican Party. It is far more Donald Trump than Larry Hogan. I wish it weren't so, but it is.
Okay, well, the way you look at Donald Trump, I looked at Martin O'Malley's Baltimore. Even when the riots went down, the curfew was only in the black community. How more apartheidish can you get?
Yeah.
Ain't none of them no damn good. And so the solution is a third party, a legitimate third party.
That I agree with.
A legitimate, if you want to solve things, a legitimate party that votes in the primary.
I agree with that.
And term limits for Congress and the Senate. term limits, term limits, term limits.
You know
2
why
terms
that's
and they go home. 2 terms and they go home.
you know why that's never going to happen, right?
Because people want that money.
Right, because they have to vote on the term. You're asking the fox in the hen house to vote on that legislation.
Like the
They're not going to
police and the police.
they're not going to term limit themselves. How
Like
many
the
people,
consent decree.
Donnie? Right. If you and I had a penny for every member of Congress who got elected who said, "I'm going, then I'm term limiting myself," and then stayed beyond their self-imposed term limit because life was too good, you and I'd be retired sitting on a beach somewhere.
Here's another thing. Before you start a war, send the 2 leaders into the boxing ring. Because I get sick of these chumps starting fights that they can't fight. Let Ronald Reagan go into the boxing ring. Let him battle it. Let George Bush go in there and battle it out with Saddam. Let him. That's where I'm from. Put your hands up. Show me what you got. And then we decide if we go to war after that. Since those 2 are beefing, let them fight. Winner takes all.
Do a pay-per-view, make a lot of money.
Where's this world going? We're now exploring outer space. We can't get this world right, but we're exploring outer space. In 20 years, it'll be a reality. All of these futuristic shows are reality. Where are we going? We can't get Earth right. We can't keep the water clean. We can't not destroy the ozone. So now, like a dirty ass kid, we're going to leave this place and go mess up somewhere else in the universe.
Yeah, get no argument from me.
Okay. Neil, why don't you go ahead and plug your business? I've gone on a tirade. I wasn't expecting to work this hard today.
I didn't mean to get you all worked up, Donnie.
Novel idea probably makes sense and have leverage.
Nah, you know what? I got so before I go into my business, I'll just say, I wish everybody had your passion. I think one of the reasons politicians get away with what they get away with is because people generally don't care, right? Elected
Look
officials.
At this. Michael Haney's profile picture. Do you know who that is, Neil?
It's hard.
Michael Haney as Francho and the lady
Yes.
Walker from Montgomery, Prince George's County. His running mate, Francho's running mate. Michael Haney is a Francho supporter. He has it as a profile picture. You think he's getting paid for that? Michael's a capitalist.
I hope he is. Good for him.
Yeah, you got to get something out of politics. My God.
Nothing.
They had to pay me a lot of money to change my profile picture. And I need to do some investigation. Who you like for governor? You got a pick right now?
I worked on Doug Gantz's campaign before. I have a personal affinity for him. So at least for now, I'm going to be supporting his campaign, and we'll see how it goes. I'm not opposed, certainly, to learning more about some of the other candidates. There are certain ones that I'm not a big Francho fan. I find him to be too political. I know that sounds like an odd way to phrase it. He's too calculating for me. That to me is a little bit of a red flag. I guess the best way to say it is I just don't trust him.
Between O'Malley and Francho, who would you like for governor?
O'Malley?
No, Martin. I'm gonna give Martin some play today. Marty Ma.
I'd probably vote for Francho over O'Malley.
The Battle of Montgomery County. We need to do a show live from Montgomery County, because that's, the DC suburbs is where it's at. But let me tell you what the DC suburbs don't have. Now notice, Francho chose the lady from PG. Rashawn Baker chose the lady from Montgomery. Neither one of them has Baltimore representation.
Yep.
Baltimore just got kicked. We got kicked to the back row.
There's an opportunity for somebody like Doug Doug Anster, who hasn't picked a running mate yet. There's if the people in Baltimore still care enough, then there's an opportunity for somebody, because like you said, Baltimore now is totally unrepresented in the gubernatorial race.
Not good.
I mean, it's a reflection, I think, to some degree of the fact that Baltimore City is just being marginalized.
Is Kelly Schultz doing it for the Republicans? Are you hearing any good things about her campaign for governor?
I haven't.
I haven't heard a peep. I heard she was at the clam bake down in Tars.
I think on the Republican side, they're just going to wait out and see what happens on the Democratic side. The Republican primary isn't going to get anywhere close to the attention that the Democratic primary is going to get.
They'll be raising money. You know what I do like about those Republicans? They write checks.
Yeah.
How much does this cost? Then they pull that checkbook out. Democrats don't understand that. It's like, do you negotiate with BG&E? The bill comes, you pay the bill. It's nothing to negotiate. Yeah, everybody has a tough time. Hey, I'll give it to you next month. But that bill's coming every month. Pay the damn bill. Pay your damn businesses.
Yep.
They just want to check. They don't want all of this. They don't want somebody on the phone that won't process their invoice. It's all about business.
Yep.
Okay, Baltimore is no longer relevant in state politics. Oh, let me tell you why that's so untrue. Totally untrue. And I'm surprised to hear that from a media guy. You know what we have that they don't have? Don't you ever forget it, Neil. We've got BlackUSA.News and Be More News. We've got television stations. We've got radio stations. It ain't my favorite daily newspaper, but we've got a very influential daily newspaper. Baltimore has media. This is the media hub for the state. We will always be relevant.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's an opportunity, like I said, for somebody to grab that and run with it, because currently it's completely not just underrepresented, but unrepresented in the gubernatorial race. And somebody savvy enough to tap into it can really, I think, gain a lot of political headwind by doing it. But so far we haven't seen it for whatever reason.
Plug your business one more time, Neil, so we can get on about it here.
I appreciate it, Donnie. Dubo Law, we are a personal injury and malpractice law firm located in Timonium. Do only plaintiffs' personal injury and malpractice work. We moved. Used to be the Pikesville lawyer, right, Donnie? Now we're located out in Timonium. Even during COVID, we thank goodness been able to grow. Talk about running a business. It's been great. We've doubled in size just in the last 6 to 9 months, and continuing to add more employees and grow. And it's been tremendous. We provide very, very client-centered services. Clients always get to deal with me. If upfront, middle, back end, I handle all of the litigation-related work in the office, and being rated as one of the top 100 trial lawyers in the state of Maryland by the National Trial Lawyers Association. So the insurance companies know when I'm on the other side, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I win every case. Nobody does, but they know they're going to get a fight, and they know that if they don't make fair settlement offers, we're going to go to trial. And they know that if we go to trial, they're going to get somebody who knows what they're doing. And what that ends up happening is, when push comes to shove, they put more money on it. They don't want to go to court against me.
My name's Donnie Glover. We'll be back. Do check us out this evening for the Black Business Roundtable. This guy's got to get his own show. Michael Haney, 6 o'clock Sundays. Check him out. And we'll be back 7 o'clock tonight and 10 o'clock tomorrow for the morning show. Have a beautiful day, everyone. Thank you, Paul Stanley, and everybody for participating.
Thank you, Donnie. Appreciate you having me.
Good morning, world. Thank you, Neil.